Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chai Talk for the Left Hook Substack, where I invite a subject matter expert who is far smarter than me to break down one big question in 30 minutes or less. And today I have my friend Maria Kari, who is one of the good souls, a human rights attorney. Yes, they actually exist. And she is doing pro bono work, nonprofit Project Taha, where she takes on high impact cases, trying to help those individuals, like college students and American citizens who are having their rights stripped away, defending them for free. And today, based on her knowledge, her expertise, and the work she's doing, I've asked her to talk about this one big question: how the Trump administration is using college protesters to crack down on free speech and the First Amendment. Maria, thank you for joining us. We are recording this on a Thursday, a day after the world is recoiling in horror. Even, yes, some folks on the right, some folks on MAGA, upon seeing masked individuals, men, snatch a Turkish national student, a Tufts University student, a young woman in hijab. They went up to her in masks, uh, plainclothesmen, essentially seems like abducted her, and then sent her thousands of miles away to a detention center in Louisiana. And also in Louisiana, we have Mahmoud Khalil, who is a green card holder, a Columbia student, a pro-Palestinian activist, who was also snatched up and sent without due process, leaving behind an 8-month pregnant wife who's a citizen. And this administration admits that he has committed zero crimes, but it doesn't matter because, well, nothing matters. Oh, yeah. And a third news item, Mario. I don't know if you've seen Kristi Noem standing in front of, I mean, probably of all the things I've said, this was the one that was the most chilling. There's just a laundry list. Standing in front of alleged gang members in El Salvador with tattoos, trying to rationalize the US government picking up hundreds of brown-skinned individuals, whom we now know several of them are just innocent immigrants who have tattoos, a Real Madrid tattoo, an autism awareness tattoo, and now they're being tortured in an El Salvador prison where our taxpayer dollars are giving 6 million to Bukele to house them. That's just the lay of the land. So, Maria, you've been on this. Talk to us specifically about college students and how this administration is using them as a Trojan horse to really go after all of us.
Yeah. So what we need to understand about this moment is that these are not scattershot roundups, right? These are roundups of students who are our best and brightest. These are Fulbright scholars. These are academics, and some of them have been working as professors, like my client Mahmoud Dutal, who's also a student and a professor at both at Cornell. I mean, these are some brilliant students who have zero criminal history, being arrested without warrants. They're going home after iftar, or they're going to iftar. So Ramaisa was going to an iftar, and Mahmoud Khalil was coming back from one. I mean,
Iftar, for those who don't know, it's the month of Ramadan still. Iftar is when we break fast. It's a community event. You eat food, you open your fast after during sunset.
and what the purpose of this is to instill fear in brown and black skinned people, in Muslim people, and it's targeting the best and brightest as a way of making an example out of them to signal to the rest of us that we need to shut up and sit down. And then
Mhm.
there's another thing at play here, right? And that is the weaponizing of immigration status. So any Palestinian in America will tell you that there's a long history of them going through this. The LA 8 case, which goes back to 1987, a year before I was born. This is an old case in the sense that, the facts of it are eerily reminiscent to what we're seeing today. And in the LA 8 case, you had a group of Palestinian men who were put into deportation proceedings for the crime of disseminating literature on Palestinian human rights, right? So in the hierarchy of things, and mind you, the LA case was a 20-year saga where eventually the government started from, the guise of national security and threat to the country, and eventually ended up having no evidence and dropped all charges and dismissed the deportation proceedings. But what that tells us is something that Palestinian Americans have already known, that standing up for Palestinian human rights is enough to put a target on your back in this country. And in the hierarchy of things in America, it's easy to go after foreign nationals, right? We've seen the targeting of Muslims and browns and blacks who are not citizens because their legal rights are weaker, but also they're not part of the voting bloc.
Mm.
So they don't make up any politicians' voting base. And that means there's not a lot of people rallying behind these students in the same way as there would be if a citizen constituent was abducted by the ICE Gestapo in broad daylight, which is what happened to Rumaisa yesterday. And, you know, before we jump into the next question, I really want to emphasize something here. These cases are not about these individuals anymore. It's not about Mahmoud Khalil. It's not about Mahmoud Dutal, my client, or Jun Sao Chung, or Rumaisa. These cases are about what this administration thinks is the right position to take on a certain political issue. And if you go against that, then the president and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, can use their power on a whim without any evidence under this flimsy allegation that your mere presence in the country somehow undermines foreign policy. And that is the determination they've made to start rounding up these people, to start revoking their visas and detaining them with the threat of deportation. And that's what we're fighting against in court right now.
And just to underscore your point, I don't know if you saw the news that came out about 5, 6 hours ago today that the Trump administration is discussing plans to try to block certain colleges from having any foreign students if it decides too many are, quote, pro-Hamas, according to a senior Justice and State Department official. Your response to that?
Look, you know, I'm disappointed by the schools here, right? People travel to the United States for the schools, and the schools have acted in a shameless, almost embarrassing way, where they're letting the government use the schools to launder the government's efforts to infringe on our First Amendment rights. And the First Amendment unequivocally applies to not just citizens, but non-citizens. So when you have the government saying to Columbia and Cornell and Harvard that we're going to take away your licensing and your funding and hyper-regulate you in a way as to coerce you into doing our dirty work by infringing on the rights of your students, the net result is that you see a chill on free speech. And the schools need to be resisting this, because if they don't push back now, we're going to have a legal precedent where universities are working with law enforcement to sort of remove students based on their political beliefs. And to me, this is eerily reminiscent of sort of the Cold War era McCarthyist tactics. And we've all been sort of saying this, where just like then, now we're seeing political dissidents being surveilled or blacklisted. And I don't even see them as dissidents, right? They're just really standing up and saying that children in Gaza shouldn't be slaughtered. But
well, Rumeysa, I mean, you mentioned a point for those who don't know, Rumeysa, who is the Turkish national, the woman who was just snatched off the street in Tufts University. Well, not at Tufts, but near Tufts. Her crime, Maria, can you tell everyone what her alleged crime was?
Writing an op-ed, something that you and I, Wajaha, do so frequently. She wrote an op-ed on something that so many of us have stood up for, which is pro-Palestinian human rights. And really, I want to emphasize that it's human rights that we're standing up for here. It is speech that is being policed here. There is no criminal act. There is no allegation of any criminal act here, not by ICE, not by the schools. These students have, at the most, have had disciplinary proceedings against them that have gone away, right? So for instance, my client, Mahmoud Utal, briefly had disciplinary proceedings, but ultimately they found him innocent on all things. They, revoked his suspension. He was due back on campus. They, there was no threat of visa revocation, and yet Trump came in on his campaign trail promising that he was going to target these students.
Yep.
These pro-Hamas, pro-jihadi students is how he described people who were saying that children in Gaza should not be killed. And he has held true to that promise. And one of the things that I think is very interesting here that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about, Mahmoud Utal's case, for instance, in that case, we have two citizen plaintiffs who have, we've shown the allegations that we've put forward, the evidence we've put forward is how their free speech rights have been chilled. And this is something that should concern and upset every American, right? I'm frequently hearing from citizens who now feel too scared to take to their social media or to speak up in classrooms about things that they worry the government or their school is going to find subversive, which really is coming back to the point of, should universities be sharing information with law enforcement? Absolutely not. But that's happened. They've given up student records. They've given up surveillance footage. They've given up protest participation details to law enforcement, sometimes without having the legal obligation to do that. right? So instead of treating your student protesters as protected speech, universities are doing the dirty job of the government. They're using these vague policies of disruptive conduct, security concerns to sort of justify their own disciplinary action, their own suspensions, and then sicking the government, who are now hunting these students in broad daylight like animals. And this is creating a chilling effect.
And you know what's common to us isn't common to everyone else. Colombia, like you mentioned, also UPenn, withheld $400 million was withheld by Colombia as a kind of a pressure tactic for Colombia to bend the knee, which they shamelessly did. Which the irony is now you can't wear masks if you're a student in Colombia with the rise of measles and of course COVID, unless you like go out of your way to prove that you're immunosuppressed. However, there's about what 35 police officers now on campus who could just pick up anyone, Maria, and so essentially, they've pretty much given their students like lambs to the wolves. And with UPenn, there was about another penalty. They're going to withhold about $150 million because of their policy to protect trans athletes. And they mentioned that one trans female swimmer from 3 years ago. And so all these colleges are bending the knee. You're a lawyer, you know it. I'm a recovering attorney, still licensed. You know they've gone after Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss, just like the colleges, decided to bend the knee and is now being complicit actor. Tell us about, you when you talk about this, you need lawyers as a defense. You need lawyers to be a bulwark. What's happening within the legal community when they're seeing an egregious assault on our free speech, the right to assembly, but done, like you mentioned, by attacking the lowest hanging fruit, the Browns, the Muslims, the pro-Palestinians. What are they doing? Are they responding, or have you seen them kind of be cowed into silence?
Absolutely cowed into silence, right? And maybe at some level I can say I understand, but I don't, right? Because I'm a one-woman show and I work pro bono. So it would be really nice if the power brokers of the legal world, the ones with the weight and the resources and the finances, were stepping up in this moment. So one woman shows like me, who was just exhausted with a 5 and 3-year-old, didn't have to be carrying the weight of sort of this moment. But if enough law firms and lawyers and nonprofits are targeted and then they're too afraid to act, this alone could be sort of the iceberg that sinks the proverbial Titanic, right? And that's what worries me right now, because one of the things that they've done along with these executive orders that have targeted schools is that they've issued these executive orders that target nonprofits, that target law firms. And the law firms, like you said, are bending the knee. They're now saying, we're going to actually divert $40 million to fighting anti-Semitism. I mean, this is terrifying, right? You have a full-on civil rights crisis, a full-on free speech crisis, an academic freedom crisis. And at this point, what I see is the elites, which includes the elite law firms, the Democrats or Republicans, the legacy media, all sort of bending the knee. And that's leaving it on the rest of us, the public, right? The citizens, especially, to stand up and protest what is happening to foreign nationals in this country. Because I don't think it's safe in this moment for green card holders or student J1 or F1 student visa holders to be out there on the streets anymore. I truly now think that in this moment, a month ago, I was not saying this. A month ago, I was saying, no, I mean, within reason, keep at it with your social media and your student protest. Now, no, I do not think it's safe, but I think that this is a moment where us citizens who have the safety net of our immigration status stand up and say not in our name, right? Because what we're seeing here is an immense responsibility and a role to play for citizens. And I'm frequently being asked, what can I do? What can I do? Push back against the policies that are going to harm our future generations, right? We're eroding what makes our education system good. Our top universities that once attracted students from all over the world and sort of led the way in research and education are now succumbing in a way that's frankly embarrassing, because they're allowing selective and retaliatory enforcement against students, and they're revoking degrees. They're sicking campus police on them. They're arming police and setting the, loose on these students. We saw that here in Texas, where I am, UT Austin students, and that's another case that I'm working on right now, where you had UT Austin students get arrested and zip tied in a way that was so terrifying and left long-term physical and emotional injuries and scars. I
Mm.
mean, this is on college quad campuses. It's a terrifying new era. But going back to your point,
And also, can I mention, in the Trojan horse, right? Oh, we're combating anti-Semitism. This doesn't help Jews. How does this help Jews? Does it help Jewish students? Does it help Jewish communities? And I've had a few Jewish leaders, well, several Jewish leaders, not the ADL, but others say that you're using us as a Trojan horse to attack our communities, students, the free speech and First Amendment, but you don't care about us. So the guise of helping curb anti-Semitism from the most anti-Semitic administration is rich, but what they're doing is they're going after, like you said, all these students whose speech they don't like, and it's just not Palestinians. I'm sure I wrote about this, and you know about this. The Canadian actress, the white woman who was
yeah,
detained for 2 weeks. The Filipina woman who's been here for 50 years, who's now in a private prison. Why? We don't know. The French national, they downloaded, they opened up his text. They didn't like some of the texts he did against Trump, so he got deported. He was coming to a conference where you are in Houston.
yeah,
So I just want to make sure that like they're going after everyone, Maria. Like this
yeah.
is, oh, we could get away with this. Oh, let's see now what we can do.
I mean, the retaliation and these sort of tactics were promised on the campaign trail, right? So I
Right.
always kind of go back to that, where a lot of people are talking about how they're scared and they're terrified and how could this be happening? This was the government always tells on itself, right? They made it very clear who they were going to go after and in what way they were going to go after them. And in the first era of the Trump administration, we saw that they act first and apologize and find the law later. Apology never comes, right? So let me walk that back. They act first, and then they try to fit it under the legal mechanism later, if ever. And that's what they're doing here, right? They're acting in a way where one of my mentors was saying to me, like, okay, well, Maria, focus on the shark that's closest encircling your boat, right? And I
Mm.
said, I actually don't really know which threat is the most real right now, because like you outlined, it's all sorts of people. And the green card holders, I think, is particularly terrifying because we maybe didn't see that coming to the same extent for green card holders to be put into removal proceedings and to have their status revoked in this way. I think that that's unprecedented. So the question then becomes, is there any hope? Is there any hope for students like Mahmoud Khalil? I think that there is, right? Courts have already ruled consistently that the provision that the Trump administration is relying on to deport Mahmoud, this foreign policy provision that's never been invoked, courts have consistently said this is unconstitutional. It's just so vague. It's just so expansive. It gives the Secretary of State unlimited authority to deport anyone at any time.
Mm.
And that is a clear violation of a person's due process rights. So there's a long way to go on Mahmoud Khalil's case and on the case I'm on, and sort of all of these cases is going to be a long run, but I think it's going to very well end up before the Supreme Court. But I think the courts are holding the line, right? And we see the judges bearing the brunt of that. We see the judges coming under attack by this administration. But so far, the judges that we've sort of appeared before and that have, been giving positive rulings, I would say, Chung, this another Columbia student, she's a green card holder. She's been here since the age of 7, and ICE is looking for her. And the court shut it down. The judge said that this is completely illegal and
That was
hinted that
this week, right?
that's right. And we sort of relied on that in our case in Mamadou and some of the recent filings we've done to say, like, look, you have judges holding the line, saying that it is likely that the way you are acting is illegal, and a habeas is now in place and you cannot detain and deport this person. So really we have the courts sort of the last, hope that we have. And then it really just boils down to the people, right? You read the Bill of Rights. It's not meant to be read by lawyers like us only. It's for the people. Educate yourself, pass this prologue, educate yourself as to what happened in the past, because we're seeing this being repeated now. And there was a way that we resisted that at that time. And I think that there's a way we can resist this at this time.
No, you're absolutely right. Is that and I'm glad you end on that note because we see when there are some judges who don't bend the knee, when there are some reporters who don't bend the knee, when there are some institutions that don't bend the knee, this administration is then forced to backtrack and then confront the public and answer questions, and they don't like answering questions. And as we've seen this week with the blow up over Signalgate, it makes them look more weak, and with pressure. They actually, well, one of them, Mike Waltz, actually apologized. Can you believe that, Maria? Pete Hegseth yet to apologize, but at least one of them did. But that's what pressure does. But when you bend the knee, a bully just takes more of your lunch money. And so, for anyone who's watching right now, especially if you're a lawyer, don't be like Paul Weiss. Be like Maria and others who is, relying upon the law and her conscience and, just decency and ethics because it isn't just about the browns and the blacks and the immigrants and the Muslims, as we have seen the past 2 weeks. It's all of us, folks. They're coming after all of us. Maria, thank you for doing God's work. Please, I know you're bad at it, but don't be a child of immigrants like me. Think like a white man. Shamelessly promote yourself. Do it.
All right, so that's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to channel my inner, very confident, um,
Bro.
yeah, Caucasian male, then I'm going to tell you that you should visit www.projecttaha, projecttaha.org. Check out some of the other work I'm doing. The work on Mamadou Tal's case and representing other students is all pro bono by my team. There is a link to donate now. Please donate to keep us going. Like I mentioned, this fight is just beginning. We are only 90 days into the era of Trump. We have many years ahead of us, and there's going to be a lot of work, especially when you have sort of the heavyweight law firms backing down on this fight. We're not backing down. And if you'd like to, follow us for case updates and whatnot, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. Unfortunately, I'm on all of these things and donate to keep us going.
We know this Trump administration has aged Amaria because we're not 90 days in, we're less than 70. But I feel you. Exactly. You're like,
It's Ramadan. It's my Ramadan brain. I blame my children in Ramadan for everything.
and
So,
you can blame the Trump administration as well. It's okay.
right.
They've given us a lot. Thank you, Maria, for fighting the good fight. Everyone, as always, take care of yourselves, be kind, and please, oh, please, don't be a fascist.